most people get into spirituality because they're having some trouble with their emotional world, and they're trying to get away from it. They're trying to avoid it. They're trying to deny it. They're trying to escape it in some way. And so, a lot of people teach, yoga, or they teach meditation in a way that helps one to actually avoid emotion, avoid feeling. And that can be actually helpful in the beginning, because if you have a really confused mind, if you have a very confused emotional world, it can be helpful for you to kind of go up and out of your emotions, be able to look at your emotions from a distance, or to begin to question them and say, is this really me? This craziness in my mind. And so, oftentimes in the spiritual path they teach that is how do I get away from my emotions? How do I just clear the slate so that I can begin to see clearly and live in a way that's, that's very much sane? And so that's helpful for most people to get that level of clarity. But what I found is that if we just stop there with just kind of transcending our emotions or living beyond our emotions, that our emotions will come back and, in a sense, bite us in the ass. They'll come back later on in life. And I actually discovered this within myself, where, I spent many years deeply meditating and sitting for hours and hours in meditation. And my wife at the time, she said, Craig, you're really good at meditation, but you're kind of a jerk. And it was a humbling experience, and she was right, and I knew this. And so at some point I realized that for these deep spiritual truths, that all is one, that what we are in our true nature is peace, for this to be true, we have to be willing to include all of ourself, all of our humanity. And so, what I found, through working with my own pain and my own shadow, is that we have to be willing to embrace these parts of ourselves. We have to be willing to include these parts of ourselves. We have to be willing to meet our anger, our sadness, our rage, our insecurity with a deep presence of love. And by that I mean, not that we're using our mind to try to make up this feeling of love and to love our emotions, but to actually step out of our mind, come into our heart, and to discover that there's just this quiet radiance and innocence in our heart. And from this quiet radiance, this quiet innocence, to be willing to go forward and to embrace that pain, to embrace those emotions, to embrace the feelings of anger or despair, to be willing to have a good cry and meet that sadness within us with love. And as we do that, the sadness, it actually begins to transform into a deep sense of tenderness, of compassion. Or if, for example, we embrace anger, people, especially spiritual people, are scared to death of their own anger. But if we embrace our anger and meet it with love, we may discover a huge amount of energy moving through our body. But if we become deeply intimate with this energy of anger, what we'll find is there's an incredible power here, an incredible truth here, an incredible strength. If we're willing to embrace it fully and meet it totally with love. But if we do the thing that most spiritual people do, is where you look at the anger, you look at the sadness, and then quickly try to do a spiritual dance to avoid it. What most of us find is that these emotions, they don't heal, they don't transform, they just kind of hang out within us, and then it's almost like they boil out of us in neurotic ways. And the typical thing is, we go on a long meditation retreat, we experience great peace, and then we come home, to our wife, to our kids, and find ourselves quite angry again. But if we're willing to meet that anger, to meet that sadness fully on the retreat, while we sit in meditation, And that energy of the anger, the energy of the sadness can deeply transform. And what we'll be left with is compassion or strength, a deep sense of love. And it's quite profound work, but we have to be deeply sincere to do this type of work.